And we're live. Thank you all for tuning in. I'm mid Twitter space, so with that, I'm just going to bring the space up, but welcome. Where'd the audio go? Hey, guys, I seem to have lost audio. Can someone say something? Oh, okay. We're back. Okay. Sorry, I just we're going live now on YouTube as well. So everyone, in a few moments, we're going to move this over to Discord for a more private conversation. Everyone here is invited. We do half the session here on Twitter and the other half on Discord. Discord's a little bit more intimate, allows for more time for people to speak. So in a few moments, we're going to do that. If you want to join, you can see a link in my bio for how to access that. You'll see there's a channel that says The Stage, and then from there you'll be on Discord. And a lot of people here are also already in the Discord, so you'll see some familiar faces. Arash, are you joining? Okay, cool. Thank you. I mean, I don't observe, but I do reflect on my potential sins. So I think atonement is good also from either a religious or secular perspective. We should all take that day at the very least once a year. Anyone want to chime in with some final thoughts before we wrap this up and bring it over to Discord?
No, could you repeat the name of the channel?
Yeah, it's just called The Stage. You'll see it says The Stage on the left-hand side. And then you click there, and then you'll be connected. Also, and for those tuning in for the first time, we do this every Tuesday, 7 p.m. Jerusalem time. We do around an hour and a half here on Twitter, and then we do, I mean, what happens on Discord, it's just a free-flowing session, so that could last for hours. And yeah, in addition to that, on Discord, we're doing conversations almost probably like 4 or 5 evenings a week, so you're all welcome to join. And I also do around 2 live streams a week on YouTube if anyone's interested in that as well. Thank you all for tuning in. Sending you much love.
Thank you.
I'm not tuning in from the Galilee today. I'm currently in Herzliya, which interestingly is a city named after Theodor Herzl. So sending love from Herzliya, from the beautiful land of Israel and Palestine. Until next time, friends. Okay, Discord, what's up? Hold on, let's get my camera on. Look at that light. Look at that lighting. Altoids, we're going to bring you on. Hold on. We're also streaming this to YouTube. This was an interesting one. We had a lot going on today. A little bit of YouTube, a little bit of Twitter. Hold on one second. Okay. Actually, we don't need to. Okay. Altoids, you've been given speaking rights, so.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear. What, you're calling in for Mea Shearim?
That's right. I'm right now in the heart of Mea Shearim, and everybody is.
How do you say shkoyach?
You hear me?
Shkoyach. Is that the right use of the term?
Yeah. Shkoyach is like.
Shal koach. May you have strength.
Yeah, is that when something good? Yeah, something good happens. Shkoyach. It's a combination of a couple of words. But,
yeah.
I'm actually in the heart of Mea Shearim, and everybody's doing the kaparot in here. I should at some point do it tonight.
Oh, cool. Okay.
But yeah. So I spoke earlier. I think it was before Shabbat. It was before Rosh Hashanah. That we spoke about the possible peace plans in Gaza and how it was after Bibi Netanyahu's speech. So I think was when? It was after Rosh Hashanah, before Rosh Hashanah? It was before Rosh Hashanah.
Are you asking?
Yeah, no, I'm just making sure that not the wrong statement. It was sometime before Rosh Hashanah. So, anywho, I remember we were speaking about it in the stream that you did on YouTube. And I told you that I'm sorry if you listen here for stuff on the background in the bus.
Yeah, all good. Just speak a little bit closer to the mic. It's a little low.
Wait, give me 1 second. For now? Do you hear me?
Yep.
Anyway, so we spoke about it, and in the conversation, I told you that the fact that the Indonesian president was saying stuff about Israel security, it made me think, why will the president of Indonesia, of all places, will be saying this? So it means that if you have one of the biggest Muslim countries in the world speaking about something of the sort with such language, maybe they know something that.
Did you cut out, or did you just end your sentence abruptly?
What?
So, yeah, I remember the conversation where you were thinking there's some kind of plan similar to this. That Israel bus recording. So what you're saying is you think Indonesia speaking that way was a signal that this would be?
I believe so, because in the plans, Indonesia seems to be one of the main contributors for the ISF, the International Stabilizing Force. So I'm 100% sure Indonesia was on the loop already about this.
Yeah, possibly.
So the fact that they approve, and they said that they approve of the plan and they're in favor of it, tells me that there was a higher the plan was already on the loop. It was going to happen. So I feel that it's promising, because the plan seems to be better than what most people expected it to be. I don't think the voluntary migration of populations is to discuss on this platter. I mean, they will give them the capacity to leave voluntarily still, but it won't be it's not a major thing of the plan.
Correct. They took ethnic cleansing off the table, which I think is a good thing.
I wouldn't call it ethnic cleansing, but
no, I understand. People like to reframe ethnic cleansing to say voluntary location after making Gaza unlivable. Obviously, people will voluntarily relocate, but it's functionally ethnic cleansing if you make a city unlivable, destroy all the means of life, and then don't let people return. The key is whether people get to return or not. Israel doesn't really have much of a track record of letting people return. But had they let them return, then yeah, you're right. It's not ethnic cleansing. But now the 21-point plan. Wait, are you able to hear me, Altoids? People are saying
yes, I can hear you. It's just that because I'm in this area.
No,
no.
So Zent can't hear me. Wait, yeah, some people are saying they can't hear me. Why is that? Hold on. Input. Yeah, okay. Leave and come back if you can. Okay. Not only that, one of the points of the 21-point plan is that Palestinians are encouraged to stay in Gaza and that it will be rebuilt. So they definitely switched their tone around on that. You could say there was a valiant effort.
It's exactly as I thought. They are. Wait, the boss is coming. Right.
Arash, we're going to bring you on as well.
But it's exactly as I told you, which is the whole plan, and I think this is one of the criticisms that I think the Palestinian Islamic Jihad said. The plan basically takes off the problem from Israel's hands and put it on the interested parties, like the Emiratis and Indonesia, and all these groups of these countries who said that they are interested in rebuilding Gaza, right? So I think that's a big part of the program, which is taking away the warring party from the situation and bringing a third party. Now, I hope it doesn't end as the situation that happened in Lebanon with the UN forces, because that was not good at all. But I don't think it will be. The situation is much different.
Right. So that actually speaks to one of the reasons why I'm not confident. It doesn't. The new plan doesn't seem to solve the power vacuum issue so well. And if there's no power vacuum, it means Israel will have a justification to continue holding Gaza, operating in Gaza, which will only further incentivize attacks against the IDF. And then we're not really in all too much of a different status than we're currently in. So I think it's a step in the right direction, but it just does not make me feel confident that the power vacuum will be filled with a responsible power. That's my my main
question for you, Adar.
Yeah, sure.
Are you familiar with the reservations and the kind of the laws and rules, as well as resources put in place for Native Americans while we are here in the United States? And I'm just wondering how much you know about kind of a similar situation of a what we would consider a peace eventually that had happened with two parties that have conflicted with each other in another part of the world?
I'm by no means an expert on that topic, I guess, nor on any topic really, but when it comes to Native Americans, I haven't studied it all too much, but what happened there, from what I know, happened what we've seen in many other instances of settler colonialism. And this is what makes Israel-Palestine a little bit more challenging, that we don't have great historical examples to copy. We're kind of in uncharted territory with Israel-Palestine because it's fundamentally unique for a few reasons. But Altoids, mute yourself, please. But in many other instances, you had the native population genocided to irrelevance. So their population became so small that the conquering population didn't fear giving them equal rights, equal political rights. And then in other instances, you did have the colonizing power leave, right? So it either required one side to get fully defeated. That's how a lot of examples of settler colonialism were resolved, zero sum, which many people are proposing for Israel-Palestine. We should all say that we don't accept a zero-sum solution that requires mass displacement of either population, but that does leave us in quite a bit of uncharted territory in terms of what the best solution moving forward is, because Israelis have an understandable concern with just granting equal rights to everybody between the river and the sea, because they feel like then they can no longer determine their destiny and ensure that they're secure, whereas Palestinians don't feel like many Palestinians don't feel it's just having just a small sliver of their historic land, and for them it's a real pain point compromising on what they already view to be a compromise. So we need to be innovative, we need to be persistent, we need to put all our efforts towards this, because we don't have a clear example that we could model off of. But in terms of your question, Native Americans, that's more or less what I understand of it. And I actually learned the other day that we signed 500 treaties with them and we broke all of them. You could fact check that, but I read that the other day. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I brought that up because, and let me just say before I say what I wanted to say, while you were talking, I was completely immersed in where you are in this. And I really respect the fact that you have the self-awareness that, you don't just calculate yourself as an expert and you're willing to be open. The idea that you then characterize what happened to the Native Americans as a genocide, which you said we genocided them, is a really, again, another contention that I just got stuck on while you were talking. And, I feel like the idea that we have historical data in other regions where people that have been conquered or colonialized have now had some sort of resolution, that could be an area where we can apply the same sort of methodologies to have a resolution and have peace and really come to some agreement where there's a lasting future for everyone there. United States, despite historical problems and a lot of death and war, the Native Americans actually are thriving and doing well, even though they have their own problems like any other group in the United States. Nothing's perfect, but they are living in peace and living actually with a lot of benefits that are not available to people who are not part of their tribes. Now, I bring this up because, again, you're going to see Palestinian conflict with Israel. The difference is that there's a global influence that is not allowing this peace to come about. As more and more people start using certain kinds of characterizations about one side or the other, that division is not going to allow to have the kind of a result that we have in an example like the Native Americans in the United States or others similar to it. And I'll give you an example like that word you just used to characterize the wars and what has happened to the indigenous Americans as genocide. There were people who showed up in this land who decided to live here, and they were met with conflict because they were colonizing. That led to war. Now, the wars never ended, and the Native Americans continuously wanted war, and eventually they were overwhelmingly destroyed in that war. We can't call wars that result in one side having extreme civilian death a genocide, because they were wars. The idea that this is some kind of conflict happening today where one side committed an act of war and still hasn't resolved it, has not given the hostages up, they're still committing the act of war in real time. Never in that whole context could we call the result of that a genocide, because it's still an ongoing war.
Wait, what?
So now the public.
Real quick, what makes you believe that something can't be both a war and a genocide? So, for example, you could say that there is legitimate fighting between two entities, yet one of the entities is inflicting a massive toll on the civilian population that's not necessary. So that could constitute a genocide. That also is a war. So one can argue and say Israel is at war with Hamas, yet committing genocide against the people of Gaza. I think that's a defensible position. It's not contradictory. You could say the same thing.
You could say that about every war.
Well, it depends.
That's the problem.
Wait,
no.
The
word genocide, it could apply to every war.
No. It doesn't. Civilians doesn't mean genocide. Doesn't mean civilians being killed. It's an intent to destroy a population in whole or in part. And while I mentioned I'm by no means an expert in what happened.
How are they doing that?
Well, at least when it comes to the Native Americans, I mean, we intentionally spread disease amongst their populations. We would take blankets covered in smallpox and throw it in their camps and stuff. I mean, what's the intention there?
Weren't just one group. There were hundreds of groups.
Yeah, they're all gone.
They weren't targeting any one group.
We eliminated their food source. We constricted their movement. We Trail of Tears. We basically migrated.
Yeah, I don't even. Is this even a controversial opinion?
None of those rise to what we would consider genocide. They are in and of itself their own atrocities. The Trail of Tears.
Well, how do you define genocide?
The intentional
destruction of a
killing,
group, whole or in part.
Murder.
No, destruction of a group. Different
of a group,
killing.
In whole or in part. The idea that they came to this land to colonize and they were met with war. They were met with war every single time. And that's just the way the Native American structures are. Even if they were into moving in each other's territory.
Wait. So is it possible?
500 agreements if it was nothing but war.
Wait, is it possible? Wait, is it Arash? Yeah, Arash.
I didn't finish my sentence. Even amongst themselves, when those native tribes would inflict or some sort of cross territories amongst each other, they would be meeting each other with war. Not only that, there's native tribes that would human sacrifice.
Wait, hold on. Hold on. This is
just
Arash. This is a different argument. This is like just such a popular colonial argument. It's talking about the barbarity of the native populations in order to justify our barbarity towards them. So if you want to talk about how Native Americans weren't these peaceful people and they were killing each other, which is true, you could have that conversation, but that in no way, shape, or form speaks to whether they were genocided or not. You could genocide a population.
Talk about it because
why?
It's a wrong argument to make because it's a whataboutism. You're calculating yourself to tell me that it's whataboutism.
No. It's not. What you just did isn't whataboutism. You're just inserting unnecessary information to demonize.
Why is it unnecessary? We're talking about another population
I'll tell
people
you.
that were.
I'll tell you, because if something's a genocide or not has nothing to do with how violent the population you genocide.
I'm making that argument. Let me tell you how I'm making that
argument.
So the more and more people characterize this, as a genocide, the more and more divisive it gets, and the harder it is to reach any kind of solution, because you're now dividing people up into camps. You're not bringing people together. The word genocide needs to stop. It needs to end. This is not rising to the level of genocide because there is no targeted effort to eradicate a group. They could do that in an afternoon, and they haven't done it. The idea that you would somehow characterize as a genocide is one of the biggest anti-peace propaganda movements that the IRGC and Qataris and others who might be involved, I don't know if they are, they would be in trying to influence the world to do so. Not only that, their allies in Russia and other places are experts in propaganda. Russian propaganda.
All right, fine. Wait.
Historically,
Arash.
Big.
This is a form of a genetic fallacy. So imagine if during World War II, someone were to say, well, I mean, bro, if you're going to commit fallacies,
always something. If I say anything, it's either this, that. Okay,
wait. How about instead of getting defensive, maybe reflect on the fact that you make flaws in argumentation and they're worthy of being called out.
Make a point without characterizing what I'm saying.
No. Hold on. You're still airing out a grievance from the Twitter space that has nothing to do with me, because I didn't call your argument that, although I do sometimes call things Zionist or Hezbollah arguments, admittedly, but I address the argument. It's perfectly okay to wait, hold on. It's perfectly okay to call out when something's a fallacy, because I think we should all improve how we communicate and the arguments we make. When I also commit logical fallacies at times, and whenever they're pointed out, I'm grateful at the opportunity to learn and improve. So don't go
ahead.
Okay,
by all means.
So if someone were to say during World War II, if I were to say, I think the Nazis are really bad, and you could say, oh, well, that's what the Soviets are saying. The Soviets were horrible. Does that mean they can't be right about some things? The Soviets, as horrible as they were right that the Nazis were bad. So when you say it's not genocide, this is what Iran's saying in Russian propaganda, that in itself does not negate whether this is genocide or not. So if you
ready for my rebuttal?
If you believe it's not genocide, make the claim that it's not genocide. Don't just blame it on other parties.
It for me. The Soviets used to claim that during World War II, that the Nazis are bad, but then now they're doing it again. They're claiming there's Nazis in Ukraine and they invaded. The fact that you would bring up something to justify that there should be a resolve based on your ideology, that is possibly fueled by inaccurate propaganda. Right.
I literally
to just characterize it.
I
use the same thing over and over and over again. When the Russians did call the Nazis bad, it was during the time when the Nazis existed and they were doing something bad. Now they're hunting Nazis again.
Arash.
And so it's funny that we can now call everyone Nazi, or anyone that we want. We could call them genocidal. It's like, when do we rise to the point of realizing what is a Nazi and what is a genocide, and start really just
Well,
stop like characterizing people as things.
I think it's probably easier to have a conversation as to what's genocide when we actually make coherent arguments. I don't know why you think that
Good.
me. Okay, but all you're doing is trying to attribute the arguments to who made them, and that these are unfavorable actors. Therefore, you reject them. You still
I'm telling you that calling
you still haven't
Israel
made the case.
a genocidal country is not going to allow for peace. That is my case.
No, okay,
And so
hold
now
on.
It's the root point.
So now you're
Is it
wait. Now you're making a strategic point. You're not saying whether it's genocide or not. You're just saying you see harm in calling it genocide. You still haven't made the case why it is or it isn't genocide.
I am also making the point on a separate note, but that's irrelevant, right?
I haven't heard
Technically, it's not a genocide. But if you were to call it one, the burden is on you to prove it is.
Yeah, and a lot of people have made the case. They've put out very compelling arguments, and
where's the proof?
So again, many people have made cases that it's a genocide.
Propaganda.
Hold on, many international bodies, individuals, scholars of genocide, activists. There's a growing consensus that this is genocide. Now,
Yes,
wait.
Propaganda works.
Hold on. You could disagree, but you right now you do not address the arguments being made by those claiming it's a genocide. You made a whole you made a whole string of arguments that have zero relevance to whether this is a genocide or not. You made the case that the genetic fallacy, and then you went on to say calling it a genocide causes XYZ problems, but that's not actually addressing whether it's a genocide or not. Do you want to address any of the claims, the arguments people are making that it is a genocide? All right, go for it.
I will. I'll address it like this. I'll use a scenario. Let's all pretend right now we're in a crowded place, and 100 people or 50 or 20 people just started running in one direction. Everyone would think there's something wrong, and out of their own safety, they would run in that direction, not knowing any of the facts, but because that's what humans do. We are a species similar to apes because we evolved from that species. We are a community type of species. We learn from each other. We are apes. I'm not going to argue that. I love that we have evolution from that. But look at the species in and of itself. They work together in a community, and they learn from each other, and they act together. They have a hierarchy, and they fight each other and kill each other. All of this is natural, and it's part of nature. The fact that you would have 20 or 25 people running in one direction in a crowded space tells you just on itself, nature made us this way. Just because a bunch of people, a community, an overwhelming growing community is falling off a cliff, would you go fall off a cliff too? Or would it be smart if you did? The fact is that we are just basically running in the same direction because a bunch of other people are running in the same direction. That doesn't make your argument that whether or not it is or is not a genocide, any way, fact or not. You need to create a fact out of actual evidence. You can't say, oh, a bunch of people are believing in it, so I do too. That doesn't have any cogent, logical, reasonable sense. That's my argument. And that's why this peace that you want and everyone else wants can't happen. Because
okay, wait, Arash, I need to cut you off because
everyone else believes in it.
No,
then it's over.
Arash,
we have nowhere to go.
Arash, you still did not rebuttal any of the claims that it's genocide. What you did was you pushed back on those who,
because the burden's not on me. The burden's on you. I didn't call it
wait. Arash, we already covered this, but I'll say it one more time. Okay. If somebody is saying, I believe it's a genocide because everyone says it's a genocide, you could say, well, that is an appeal to the masses.
That's what you said.
No, that's not what I said. I said there's a growing.
You said
no.
Governing bodies. There's organizations.
Yeah. I was explaining that there's a growing consensus. That wasn't that.
That's just like a nicer, fancier way of saying a lot of other people believe in it.
You're missing something fundamental. That was not my that was not my argument for whether it's a genocide or not. In fact, I haven't even put my position out as to whether I think. Hold on. I haven't put my position out as to whether I think it's a genocide or how it's defined. I mean, I have on stream, so some of the viewers have seen this, but not in today's conversation. I said genocide in relation to the Native American population, which you took issue with, and then you moved it over to when it comes to Gaza. And every reason you've given for why it's not a genocide is not actually addressing those arguing it is a genocide. Now, for those who...
Because if I charge you with murder, it's on me to prove that you murdered someone. I can't just charge you with murder without fact.
Hold on. Now, because this has a legal and scholarly definition, somebody can say, I don't claim to understand the definition well enough, so I defer to the experts. That's not really an appeal to the masses or an appeal to authority fallacy. It's okay to defer to experts on some issues you don't know enough about. That being that, hold on, Arash, hold on. That being the case, that's not in itself an argument, but it is okay for people to defer to the experts. Now, there have been people, okay, whether it's scholars, the UN, Amnesty International, or many other organizations have put out multiple page reports as to why they believe it is a genocide. So that is them making the case, okay?
Right.
So you say the burden of proof is on them. So that's them actually making the case.
What is their case? Can you tell me the case?
I could try to steel man the general some of it, but I want to ask you. I want to acknowledge you haven't addressed what they're saying, and I get the sense you haven't read any of their reports either. You just reflexively don't like the term. You think that if Israel wanted to kill everyone in Gaza, they could. Have I read every single one? No, but I do look. Yeah, I do look at these reports for sure. Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, now that you have, can you please share with us the overwhelming amount of knowledge that you have?
Yeah, I'm happy to make the case that these organizations are making.
That is because it's relevant to this. It's relevant to this.
Because
we were talking about having a peaceful solution.
Yeah, but let's at least acknowledge that you feel very strongly about a claim that you yourself have not yet given legitimate pushback on, and you yourself haven't really looked into those making the claim, because so far every argument you've made is not.
I will be the first one. I will be the first one in the front lines calling this a genocide. As far as I know, nobody and no claim, no scholar, nothing has risen to the point where it is actually a genocide. These are all opinions. I can't see it or find it, and I'm not going to fall in line like lemmings or sheep just because a bunch of organizations or groups have written whatever.
No, I mean you're not like some free thinker on this. You're just falling in line with the pro-Israel camp.
That's actually what a free thinker is.
No, but bro, Arash, I'm sorry. I'm not.
But you want me to just take opinion?
No, I don't. I know. I don't want you to take opinions. I just don't want. I don't want you to think or say that you are more of a free thinker than those saying it's genocide. You're just in the pro-Israel camp. You're defensive of Israel, so you refuse to.
You're a free thinker. I've given you that. And yet you, after all the conversation you have not given me, and you say you've read it, you've done some reading that I apparently have done none, according to you've come to the
I asked.
So you've read. Give me something. Give me one thing. Just
sure.
Time right now. Explain.
Yeah.
One thing that makes this a genocide.
I'm gonna do that. I just want everybody to recognize the deflection, the massive deflection that happened here.
It's not a deflection. You can't. The deflection is the genocide conversation. Is the deflection to peace? That actually is the deflection. But okay, you're allowed to yours. I'm allowed to mine. You call it a deflection. I'm also going to do the same thing.
Okay.
You see, this is the thing. It's not what's good for the goose is good for the gander. You can't do that. The steel manning is on you now. You're steel manning.
You came on here with a very strong opinion about genocide, and then through a series of questions, it became abundantly clear that you actually don't really know what you're talking about on the issue. And now you're saying, well, you haven't made the case either. So I will, because I've read it. Or I've read many of the reports. I've read many of the reports. So they focus.
That you know what you're talking about, and I don't, and you still haven't given me what.
No, I'm not. I'm not looking for credit. I just want you to have just a little higher degree of.
We've already conceded that. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Okay.
In fact,
cool.
I'm an idiot.
Cool.
Please tell me what is a genocide.
We don't need any of that self-flagellation, but it's good that you acknowledge that on this. You don't know what you're talking about. So those
I have no problem dying on the sword.
Those making the case that it's a genocide are focusing on actions Israel has taken that have essentially attacking the population, right? So there's a few key things that they focus on, which cannot be claimed to just be, we are fighting Hamas and civilians got in the way. There are a series of actions.
How does it rise to a genocide?
What's that?
How do those key things rise to genocide? Give me a
because
you're not being specific.
Bro, I'm getting into it. I'm literally 20 seconds into my explanation, and you get your panties up in a bunch, and you need to chime in. So let me continue.
I'm excited.
For fuck's sake.
I've been waiting for a long time, guys. The same thing.
So they focus on a set of Israel's actions which are targeting the entire group, which are not actions necessary to fighting Hamas. They are collective punishment. One of them is ceasing all aid entering Gaza for many months at a time. That's one. Second is the systematic destruction of their water systems, wells, pipelines, desalination. We systematically destroyed their water systems. The other is the systematic inhibition of their medical infrastructure. So their healthcare system has practically collapsed at a time when they need as strong a healthcare system as possible. We've intentionally diminished its ability to function properly. We systematically destroyed cropland. We're systematically destroying civilian homes.
Prove that it's systematic.
Okay.
Please tell me how you know it's
Sure.
systematic.
I mean, sure. We have
Give it to me.
we have
I'd like to hear that you said the word systematic. Now you have to live by that and die by that, because if it's not systematic and it's simply a result of war and conflict because the enemy exists in that sort of civilian infrastructure, then you have to now restructure your word as a genocide, and instead this is a conflict, a war, and every human person that has died due to it is a casualty of war.
Yeah, okay.
The systematic
so
word, where did that come from?
Yeah, we could get into systematic stuff. So first of all, you are pointing to a challenge in international law and why very few things have been called a genocide or determined to be genocide in international courts, because it's very hard.
Correct.
No, bro, this isn't a gotcha. Okay, this.
You said it. You just said it. Why other things aren't called a genocide is because there is no system.
No.
Right now, under your definition, where if there's starvation, if there's water or power or other.
I server muted Arash. You're being absolutely insufferable, completely insufferable. I'm giving you ample time to speak, and the second I start speaking, you just lose self-control and you need to hop in. It's hard to prove things are genocide in the court of law because it's hard to prove intent. Okay. All the things that have been determined genocide in the court of law took many years. Rwanda genocide, which I think the intent was pretty obvious, it took 20 years for the courts to determine that's a genocide. The quickest genocide, I think, was Bosnia, and it took them a whole 7 years. So it's not easy to prove in the court of law that something's a genocide. It's hard to prove intent unless you get really significant whistleblowers or leak documentation or just explicit language of the leadership. That's why scholars have a much broader interpretation of what genocide is, because they understand that it's too narrowly defined in court, it's too hard to prove, and it's not serving its purpose. If genocides are happening and the world can't do anything about it, clearly there's a problem in how this is defined. So back to your question saying, how do you prove that it's systematic? So there's certain things that we're not going to get a whistleblower telling us, and I've spoken about this pretty exhaustively, that the command from above in Israel is not saying kill civilians. That's not what happened. It's a reduction of protection for civilians to such an extent that we're just seeing massive death and destruction towards the civilian population. But when it comes to the systematic destruction of civilian infrastructure, I mean, there's a very clear policy in place. When soldiers stay in a home, after they stay in a Palestinian's home, they burn it to the ground and bulldoze it. And their reason for doing so is saying, just in case we left equipment, we don't want Hamas to retrieve it, so we're going to destroy the home. This is a family home with the family's belongings in it. It's just destroyed. In addition to that, we see that Israel's flattening neighborhood after neighborhood. The justifications they often give are, well, it might be booby-trapped. Well, there might be tunnels there. Well, Hamas might use that to shoot on us. These are all tactical things, and this could be said about any urban warfare in the history of the world. You don't know where your enemy is. You don't know which building they might pop out of. But we have not seen any military systematically flatten neighborhood after neighborhood the way Israel has. So there has been a very systematic destruction of civilian infrastructure. But and this is why intent is hard to prove. You're not going to hear the chain of commands in Israel say, we're going to destroy infrastructure just to punish the population. No, that would be dumb. They could justify it for military means. Yeah, we're doing it because we don't know what's booby-trapped. We don't want to risk it, so we're just going to flatten the whole neighborhood. So that's how they justify it. So I think what we're seeing when it comes to Israel is potentially the first genocide in history, while the nation committing it was trying to maintain plausible deniability. Everything Israel is doing can always be blamed on but Hamas. But the international community, people are looking at it, they're saying, we don't buy this but Hamas narrative, not when you destroyed the healthcare system, not when you destroyed the water system, not when you're systematically flattening neighborhood after neighborhood, not when you're stopping goods from entering for months at a time. This is an attack on the civilian population. And then when you look at Netanyahu, Smotrich, and Ben Gvir, their stated goals has on many occasions, they said they would like to relocate Gazans. If you want to relocate Gazans, the best way to do it is to make Gaza unlivable and life for Gaza unbearable, causing the population to, in quotations, voluntarily relocate. So you could even see an incentive for Israel to want to harm the civilian population. It helps them achieve their goal of potentially relocating Gazans. So the incentives there, the actions on the ground are there. Do I think it will be determined to be a genocide in the courts? Probably not, because again, it's not going to be easy to prove intent unless the court changes how they rule on these things. But I think it's good that the international community are using very harsh language to describe very harsh actions, because I think as we make moral progress as a species, we need to move beyond the barbarism of thinking it's okay to just mass kill civilians by incinerating them with high-powered explosives. It's good that this language is being used. It's good that we're being very harsh to describe these actions. Now, I'll go on to say, I don't generally, when I'm doing my commentary, I don't refer to genocide, because I don't care for the debate on terminology. And I know it turns off Jews and Israelis because it's our frame of reference for genocide is the Holocaust, and this is not the Holocaust. It's quite different. And it turns off Jews and Israelis, and I want to have meaningful conversations with them. So for strategic purposes, I don't commonly call it a genocide, but I think the case that it's a genocide is certainly defensible. And Arash, I'm happy for you to make the case why it's not, without just blaming who came up with the definition or bandwagon fallacy or anything like that. You're welcome to respond. I'll unmute you. All right, you should be able to speak now.
Okay, so, thank you for that. You took many minutes and made about 6 or 7 rapid fire points that I have to sit here and bang, bang, bang on each one of them with rebuttals, which is very unfair. But that's how you want to moderate, and so I can't interject on
Wait.
each one. So let me give you.
No. Hold on. So, wait. First, you kept.
I haven't even finished my
I know
first
that.
sentence.
Yeah. I know.
Ahead.
Because you come out.
You could do it, but I can't do it. That's fun. I wanted to talk while you're talking, and you said, "Hey, man, I haven't blah blah blah. I haven't been able to finish." Like, can I talk before you jump in? Number one.
Yeah. First of all, I'm hosting.
You muted me, and you said that.
Yeah. I'm hosting, and I make judgment calls based on situations. I sometimes do let people interrupt one another, but for you, it's just nonstop, consistent. You're doing it in the Twitter space. You're doing it now. It just got tiring, so I stopped it. I'm not going to cut you off. I'm going to let you speak, but I really want us to keep track of how this conversation is going, because after making all those,
it's hard to keep track.
Hold on.
Nonstop back-to-back.
Hold on. It started by you making a bunch of irrelevant points and logical fallacies as to why it's not genocide. You then accused me of not being able to make the case myself. I started making the case, to which you started interrupting me. I muted you, made the case, and now your complaint is that I put out too many points, and that's unfair. So it sounds like you would have preferred to interrupt me after every point. Is that what you wanted to do?
No. I would have preferred not to have a bunch of points that I have to respond to at once. But okay, you
go for it. The floor is yours.
You just made my case for the argument that I have, and most people share like mine. You just literally made the case for me. You said it's hard to prove intent, and that's that. Once we sit on that fact that intent hasn't been proven, that's why I'm saying everyone jumping the gun to support the possibility, to entertain the conversation that this might be a genocide, is the impediment for peace. You guys, all of you, who have decided to just go and run on this roller coaster of is it or is not a genocide and just entertain it, has created a lifetime of oxygen for the actual problem, which is this conflict is going to continue as long as one side sees that their weapon is to propagandize genocide and to make it a conversation that is ongoing. Until there is intent proven, we cannot call this for sure a fact, a genocide. You proved that for me in your rebuttal. You said that it's an intent is hard to prove. And you also referenced, apparently you think there's only one genocide on this earth that we reference. No, the Armenian genocide that, by the way, was just, it's just been constant. It's been recognized more and more as time goes on, is an actual genocide. Now, what did they do? Weren't all of the same things happening where there was infrastructure destroyed in Armenia, water and power, all the things that you just said. But the biggest thing is that they took trenches, opened them up, and threw the bodies of civilians in there, killing them systematically with intent, and it's obvious. The idea that somehow you could take real genocides that have been globally recognized with intent as genocide and start preemptively calling this conflict genocidal on only one side is so weird to me, when the other side, who actually is still engaged in war, has hostages, continues not to concede, continues not to wave the white flag and disarm. That war is an ongoing war. That side that doesn't respond and has hostages is actually genocidal. And they actually have the intent to eradicate Israel and the Jews and non-Jews in it, because they did it when they did the attack on October 7th. They killed non-Jews as well. That is a genocidal position that is being fought by the IDF. And yet the IDF has become the ones that are being characterized preemptively by people who are just aware that this intent has not even been proven yet, but that in and of itself is the biggest problem this conflict is seeing, because you're throwing napalm and oxygen on a fire. You're giving a side that should have been defeated by now more oxygen to breathe, because they're winning an ideological war now. That's where I'm going with this. You will not see a peace in this country, and I'm calling it Israel, this country, Israel. You will not see peace in Israel as long as its enemies know that the entire globe has been propagandized to think that there's a possible genocide. This is an active war. Casualties of war exist. The fact that infrastructure has been destroyed does happen in war, even if you want to spin this propaganda around that it was done because they're, have an intent towards genocide. You can do that, but there's no intent that's proven yet. So while there is no intent, the people and the propaganda and the groups, organizations, and institutions who write their opinions about this globally simply make this conflict continue for decades longer. Stay out of that word, because that word, along with others, are really destroying the possibility to get to peace. The second thing I was going to get to was a couple of other names you pointed out, which is very problematic, to think that somehow people who are members of the cabinet and have no say in what the war-like functions of the IDF are. They can't do anything when it comes to what the IDF is going to do. They simply are voicing opinions just like you are. Those opinions of those idiots, and I'm sorry I have to say that, those people don't have the full backing of the Israeli people. They have a small political, or maybe actually a large political influence because of their voters. And that does not reflect upon the entire Israeli population. To cherry pick the opinions of a few people, it's the same respect of cherry picking the opinions of agencies, organizations, and institutions, scholars, and otherwise and whatnot, who have started to characterize this prematurely as a genocide. Scoop up facts, not opinions. That's what I want to see in this region. Once people stop this whole thing of embracing opinions, we get to the point where we can abandon this idea that there's a genocide going on, that oxygen is taken out of the room for all of these terrorists, I'm going to label them that, who are actively pursuing this war based on ideological need. We could get the hostages removed, we can have Hamas disarmed, and we can have whatever peace agreement that comes out of that. The reason why they don't is because people keep talking about a genocide. The Armenian genocide and the Nazis who created the genocide, those two genocides have been cheapened dramatically by the fact that 60 to 80,000 people have been killed, and many of them combatants of Hamas.
Is the Bosnia genocide not a genocide? Is the Bosnian genocide not a genocide?
Wait, Bosnian genocide? Is it a genocide? Has it been intent?
Yes.
Has it been proven? Then it is.
But only 8,000 people died.
If it is a genocide, then it's a genocide.
Wait. So okay. So you had ample time to respond, and you still didn't make the case why you don't believe it's a genocide. The only case you actually made, aside from saying why you think it's harmful to use the term, you said that we should wait until intent is proven. But I gave you clear examples of why it takes years and often decades, and why often it's very hard to prove intent.
So you're going to jump the gun.
No, well, so people are responding to what they're seeing, video evidence, testimonies, death toll data, right? So people respond to what they have available in order to make assessments in real time. The point of the Genocide Convention is to be able to stop a genocide while it's happening, not determine on it a decade afterwards. Now, let me ask you something. Wait, hold on.
Okay.
If the Jews were being genocided, right? Would you, and people were rallying, calling it a genocide, but it was also done through plausible deniability. Let's say Iran was just massive bombarding all of Israel. Every single major city in Israel has multiple military bases in it. So let's say Iran was just raining down rockets, thousands of rockets, hundreds of thousands of Israelis were being killed. But Iran's like, no, we're just aiming towards the military bases. There's some margin of error with these missiles. Some of them miss. We're not intending it. And the world is rallying, saying, guys, this is genocide. This is genocide. This is genocide. Would you agree with the argument? Guys, wait. Let's wait till we could prove intent. I don't like this terminology. It's not the right way to use this terminology because we didn't prove intent yet. Would you support that?
What do you mean? Would I support the fact that there's a possibility of a genocide?
No. Would you support the same argument you're making now, saying, guys, we can't prove that Iran's intent is genocide, so let's not use the term. Let's just call it a war, even though hundreds of thousands of Israelis are being killed.
Yeah, there are other words we can use. Currently, we can use the word massacre, crime against humanity, even ethnic cleansing.
Sure. But if people were calling it a genocide, do you really think you'd be arguing with them, or you'd be like, you know what? I am grateful that the world.
I would tell you that it's very important that we become very careful with the language.
I'm not buying that. If your people were being killed, you'd be grateful. Okay. If you want to,
Can I make a point?
Yeah, go for it.
It's not about gratefulness. It's about peace. I know that language isn't bringing the people peace quicker.
Okay, fine. I'll say one thing. If you want people to stop,
is a genocide. 100%. There was genocide.
There you have.
Yeah. Exactly. You see how broadly they define.
Intent is proven.
What?
Just like the Bosnian.
Wait. What was the intent? What was the intent on October 7th?
Intent was proven. We have it on GoPro cameras.
What was the intent?
To kill as many Israeli civilians as possible.
Nowhere in there.
Yes.
Nowhere.
Yes, actually.
Wait.
Yes.
Where's that proven?
Can I make a point?
Where's that proven?
I need to. I have to
Their actions and their speech and their writings have proven it. They have a charter, has been manipulated through time, but it was started, the Hamas charter, to intend on genocide back then. Their charter, the idea that then they act upon it later on is the same kind of manipulation that you're accusing the Israelis of. And now you're sitting here saying that one side is genocidal over the other. The idea that we are fighting a genocidal entity to be able to eradicate them, disarm them, and release hostages is in and of itself genocidal is strange to me.
Arash, can I ask you a question?
Okay, yeah, we're Zent, all you.
Sorry. Actually, Evan, I'm going to give you, you've been wanting to say stuff for a while. So Evan, you go first, then I will proceed after. Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to make a point about maybe this is somewhat devil's advocate, but it's also somewhat like a legitimate point about genocide and genocidal intent. So during the Holocaust, I mean, obviously there was no thing like Hitler and the Nazis says, if the Jews meet these conditions, we'll stop the Holocaust, right? It's like this.
Yes.
Yeah.
There wasn't, but they did have a Hamara agreement where they said, guys, leave.
No, I'm talking about that was before the Holocaust. I'm talking about
agreed.
41 onwards. But I mean, so doing this, Israel has repeatedly said, if you do this, remove Hamas, disarm Gaza, other stuff, we'll stop. So I guess in some ways, the brutal conditions could be seen as collective punishment on civilians until they meet those terms. So yeah. I guess it's it's conditional in the way genocide is traditionally like done. It's conditional to meeting certain
Okay, so let's say you were right. Let's say Hamas returned the hostages on October 8th and they just disarmed. Do you think Israel wouldn't do anything? No. They would. They would still bomb Gaza. There would still be that we need to, what is it, the Dahia doctrine. We need to do this damage to condition what would not the defense. What's it called? I can't remember the term, but it's so that people don't attack.
Where do you live?
I live. I'm in Canada right now, but I mean the States. Sorry,
man. I wish you were in the States. I wish you were in the States. I would drive to you. We would go get lottery tickets right now because I want to win, man. You know the future.
I'm in Jersey City, but
let's go. Can I have next week's lottery ticket numbers?
You got it. I'll hand it to you.
Thank you, because you know exactly what's going to happen to next week, right?
I don't understand what your point is.
My point is that how do you know what Israel's going to do in the future? You can't just say that.
What do you mean? We've seen there has been.
No, we could speculate. We could speculate.
There's historical precedent. I'm not making stuff up.
Arash, the central part of your nearly non-existent anti-genocide argument was that it's causing. If we stop using the term, then we'll be closer to peace. That's pure speculation on how parties are going to act in an alternate universe that you created for yourself. And now you're getting super defensive when somebody does it. Come on, bro.
No, but the Turks and the Bosnians and the Nazis never had a situation where they would say, if you return the hostages and you disarm, the war ends.
It was the Serbians, by the way, not the Bosnians.
The Serbians and you're right. They didn't have that. There was never some kind of an agreement where we would end this. This is a war.
Anyways, continue, Zen.
Not a genocide.
Continue, Zen.
Genocides can come out of wars. Just FYI.
Yeah, it could be a war and a
genocide.
Do,
but this is not a genocide yet, or will it be? In my opinion,
you've been saying a lot of wrong.
You've already called it and characterized it.
Arash. It's not your turn to speak. We know you think it's not a genocide.
Sure.
You're just not able to explain why not. But I'll get Zen.
Let me just say a couple of things. Arash, you said there wasn't a systematic dropping bodies into trenches. That happened at Al-Shifa Hospital first time, and second time that happened at the medical convoy massacre where they buried people. I've watched
the Israelis didn't do that. The Palestinians did that to themselves. That wasn't Israeli.
What?
No. The medical massacre that was Israel.
That was not an Israeli trench built by the IDF. That was something that the Palestinians.
How do you think they got a bulldozer?
No. You're confusing different things. What we have no evidence coming out of Gaza of is people being lined up and shot in ditches. So if you want to make the case that that's happening in Gaza, there's no evidence that that's happening. There have been mass graves found, and I don't know how many people constitutes a mass grave, but there have been some graves where there's been dozens of people found in there, but it's unclear if those were graves dug up by Palestinians to bury dead or Israelis. I don't know what difference it really makes at that point. It just shows massive numbers of people are dying and they need to be buried in single graves because they can't all have funerals. It shows that there's mass killing. But the claim that people are being lined up and shot, that's not happening based on what we know.
I'm not making the claim.
Okay. Oh, but wait. And then there was the medical massacre where we shot up the ambulances. Yes. Israel with bulldozers dug a hole and buried the bulldozers. Correct. And they were caught in that.
Correct.
One. Yeah.
Yes. They buried the bodies and then the ambulance on top.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that if you look at recent cases of genocide of the past few decades, whether it's in Myanmar or Bosnia or Darfur, there's been mass rape of women by soldiers. I haven't seen evidence of the IDF doing that to Palestinian women. I mean, there's some men who have had that in detention, but I haven't seen any evidence of women being raped.
And where? In Palestine? In Gaza?
I haven't seen evidence of IDF raping Palestinian women. It's another thing because recent cases of genocide have had that.
I would read the UN report. The UN report came out with something in March. I don't know if that's. I think that's in State Iman and other detention facilities.
That's men who've been like.
This is. I'm sorry, but this is.
Wait, but that's
so you're
not.
Gonna say the Nazis, when the Nazis raped women in the concentration camps, that doesn't count as part of the genocide?
No, I'm saying that I haven't seen any sort of like
Okay.
large scale.
There is a UN report that discusses this that got released in March of this year. I would recommend you go read that.
And to clarify, we're
there was a guy who was
No. This is women getting raped. They're victims who came out and said, I got raped. This is not that video evidence of a man with a bunch of shields around him getting raped. This is a completely like this is a UN report.
And let me just let me clarify what's there. We're not seeing evidence of mass rape coming out of Gaza. We're not seeing that at all. But the report the report did highlight sexual violence that's happening in the Israeli prison system, as well as at checkpoints as well.
Of rape, of actual like penetration, like in rape of men, but with women they found like, you know, sexual harassment or rape threats. They didn't find any actual actions of like actual rape of women. So it's mostly with men.
I think there's people who were interviewed live who said that these things happen to them. So
can I say that's not systematic? That's some idiots in the IDF who may have made a mistake. They're being charged with crimes. You can't see. Genocide needs this like systematic approach to it, where there's like some sort of
we're not there's no
if
systematic sexual violence. But it's not soldiers. The soldiers are not held accountable for these crimes. It's very rare.
There's complete impunity. There's very little done against the soldiers. They are.
They've been held accountable.
Oh, okay. Wait. Okay, wait.
What about
hold on.
I can go in and show you.
Arash, pull up the list of Israelis who have been charged with war crimes in the Israeli courts and what their punishment is. You could get away with murder if it's against the Palestinian. That's just bullshit.
There was a guy who got gunned down in the West Bank. We have video footage of him filming himself getting killed, and nothing happened to the West Bank.
Yeah, you get relieved. You get relieved of duty. You get relieved of duty. You might need to go to court, but you know, if you kill somebody, you'll get a few months in jail, and then you'll be released. And the more radical segments of Israeli
society. Let's say you're correct. Let's say you're right. I don't want to look it up. Let's say you're right. There's impunity, and the Palestinians, if they get killed by an Israeli soldier, they're not being charged with any crimes. Then that all of a sudden is genocide? Because if that's genocide,
that's not the argument. No, Arash, stop. No, that's not. This is a different argument, and we're not saying. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just hearing we're talking about genocide. We're being but cherry picking little tiny things.
Evan brought up the fact but Evan, I don't even think it's relevant. Like we could try to say why this is different from other historical examples of genocide. I actually think it is. I think there's it's the first time it's being live streamed. It's the first time that the world is focusing on it. And I think Israel is being very careful enough. What they're trying to do is maximum damage while maintaining support from the U.S. and other Western nations. It's a nearly impossible balancing act, one they're failing at. But their actions are going to look quite different from what you saw in Rwanda and other instances. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's going to look different.
I think they've killed more than Bosnia, not nearly as many as Rwanda, though.
They've killed more than, they definitely killed more than Bosnia so far.
What was our original conversation? It was about how the Palestinians would integrate with Israeli life somehow, either with a bi-state solution or one-state solution.
Have you ever
I kind of brought up the Indians and Native Americans.
I actually want to focus on. I just want to push back on 2 points you made, Arash, that I didn't get to. So, you said October 7th is a genocide, and that you feel confident about, but you also feel confident that what Israel is doing in response isn't. I find that position generally to be telling, but let's focus on October 7th, which was a brutal massacre.
That was the beginning of a war.
The tactics you deploy are generally connected to how much power you have, and if you're a much more powerful entity, you're going to approach your military tactics very differently. When you don't have a real military and you just have essentially soldiers with guns relying on guerrilla warfare and surprise attacks, it's going to look different than if you have an air force and tanks, multiple infantry brigades, etc. When they were planning
Did they
out,
have to attack?
no, that's a different argument. You're not going to hear me make any justification for October 7th. That's not what I'm doing. But the idea that the intention of October 7th was to kill as many civilians as possible, I don't think that's really grounded in reality, and I'll explain why. When you're planning an attack, you're planning it within the means of what is possible. So you could say if they had the power, then they would XYZ, but if they had the power, the entire paradigm changes and they would view the world very differently. October 7th was far more successful in their eyes than they thought it would be. They didn't think we would have such a security failure. They didn't think they would get so far. They didn't plan for these excesses, which was all these mass killing of civilians. It was very much the main purpose was take over the bases and take a lot of captives, because that is the best negotiating tool. Once they saw they were wildly successful, you kind of had this chaos ensue, and people were like, well, what do I do? And then soldiers continued and went on to engage in brutal atrocities. That's not the same as Hamas making a command. We're going to invade Israel with the sake of destroying as many civilians as possible. It's very clearly, even from seeing the documents that they shared amongst them of what their goals were, that wasn't their intention. So it's very obviously.
What were their goals?
Their goals was to take as many hostages as possible, kill soldiers. I think those were probably their main goals. And even they had a communication.
They killed civilians and babies and grandmother. Those weren't soldiers.
Correct. There were excesses because they were so wildly successful. They just went home to home and started killing civilians, for sure. But also the targeting of
Wait.
No.
They were excesses.
No, I don't think that was the plan, because I don't think they thought that they would get that far. They didn't think they would be so successful where they would have hours and be able to go to all the kibbutzim.
How did we get here?
Well,
I think they expected Israel to respond.
How the hell did we get here? They were excesses, Adar? Really?
Yeah. Is murdering civilians is murdering?
Wow.
What's shocking that it doesn't fit your narrative and you have nothing else to say, so you're just stuck with a wow?
No, my heart hurts for the actual belief systems of people out there, that they just somehow just disrupted the reality and called something an excess because just to make it fit into their reality.
I prefaced it by saying it was a brutal massacre. I'm not trying
on your own argument, so you have to fit it to yours. It's not an excess, dude. They went out there to kill as many civilians as possible. It's very simple.
No, it's not, because
okay, great.
I explained why I believe something, and your rebuttal is this whole dramatic wow, and then just repeating your same argument. You need to understand how weak your argumentation is. You don't actually engage with people's points. Even if the command was saying,
how strong was yours when you just claimed it was excess without any kind of backing, regardless of, like, you just claimed it out of thin air? There was no argument of yours that had any substance, fact.
Wait,
logic,
hold on.
Logic.
Hold on. We literally have their documents for what the goals of the attack was. And they said, take over the military bases, take hostages, and they even put, if we're able to, let's raise our flag over their bases for psychological warfare. So again, that's fact. We do have their documentation, and we could even argue, you know what? Let's say they gave them a command to go to the kibbutzim and massacre that kibbutz. That's possible. I'm not even going to argue saying that definitely didn't happen. That's possible. That on its own would constitute a massacre, not a genocide. They don't have the means to destroy enough of the population. They didn't try.
One of them stole a phone and called his mom saying, I killed 10 Jews' moms.
Oh, wait, Arash. Is that the definition of genocide?
No,
okay.
That's not the
Okay.
case. That's
so,
just,
wait.
You know what it is?
So you're just sensationalizing because you don't have an argument.
That it is a genocide. You're watering it down to fit your narrative, because it just doesn't make any sense to say that you have these documents and that means that's the picture. Because when we take Israel at their word, you say that they could do whatever they want. They say one thing and then it could rise to genocide later. How come you don't have the same standard for both sides?
Oh,
Wait,
hold on. Wait.
Everything to make sure this is not a genocide, but because the possibility of intent is there, we have to jump the gun and call it genocide. They have genocidal intent, and they're not even hiding it. It's on GoPros. It's literally phone calls to mom saying, "I killed 10 Jews. Are you proud of me?" This is not the same.
Oh yeah, I agree. I agree.
It's not a genocide. Could you at least say it's like a genocidal massacre?
Yeah, I mean, I call it a brutal massacre.
Hamas?
I consider what Hamas did to be I say a brutal massacre. I need to look at the definition of genocidal massacre, but I think that's probably a fitting definition.
I was doing a brutal massacre.
A large-scale massacre based on some form of like ethnic hatred, but doesn't reach the full scale of like a genocide.
Yeah, that seems fitting. Genocidal massacre. Yeah.
Hitler was called the genocidal massacre against Palestinians. Like,
but again, I just want to highlight the position that how crazy it is. People are like, oh, we know that their intent is to kill as many people as possible, and then when you really look at what their communication said, when you look at what their possible means of destruction was. And then people are so quick to say, yeah, that's a genocide. But then Israel, when they kill, likely going on 100,000 civilians, destroy the means of life, they're like, no, that's just war. I mean, these people aren't living in reality. And that's just just based on an analysis that I've been consistently doing the whole.
You've given them highway. There's highway for them.
What's that?
There's a highway for them to do whatever they want without being classified as a genocide.
Arash, I'm not.
Arash. Sorry, I'll mute.
Yeah. I think we've heard enough from you. It was a little bit interesting, but it was more so annoying, if I'm to be completely honest. But I do think it's okay to have these views expressed. I just want you to really reflect on the arguments that you've made today. Okay, he left. Sorry, there's cats fighting.
How do you know it's 100,000?
Oh, no. We don't know. That's why I say likely going on 100,000. And the assessment...
66,000 in total of all people now they have it at?
Yeah, that's 66,000. That's 66,000 confirmed deaths, meaning bodies that arrived to hospitals, as well as families that reported deaths of loved ones, but with paperwork that they also had to fill out. So those are the two ways to be listed of the 66,000, but we can know for certain that you can't account for all deaths in real time. There's massive destruction. The healthcare system's not fully functional. A lot of the roads are destroyed, so ambulances can't rescue bodies. So this is 66,000 confirmed deaths. It also does include indirect deaths, malnutrition, disease, hypothermia, things that came as indirect consequences of the destruction of Gaza. And we know those aren't being included, at least for the most part, just because there's those indirect deaths primarily are young children and elderly, but we don't see unusual spikes in casualty data of those ages. And so between indirect deaths not being included, as well as many people being unaccounted for, the question is how much over the 66,000 is the real number. Some people are making wild estimates saying it's 500,000. I've looked at those analyses. They don't make sense. There's a bunch of flawed assumptions there. But for there to be an undercount of 30-40%, I think that's very much plausible, for sure.
But I've heard that I heard some posts of this is like Hamas itself said like 10,000 or something missing martyrs. So if they're only claiming 10,000, they wouldn't have a reason to lie, or underestimate them. It's the government media office or something like that.
GMO, yeah, GMO saying. They're saying, yeah.
No, they don't. They've fudged casualty figures before, so it's not like
they'd underestimate it. So
you're speaking about them saying that there's 10,000 buried under rubble.
Or missing martyrs, they call it.
Right. Yeah, no, and I think that's a pretty good point. That the way we could know that it's not hundreds of thousands is because it would be highly incompetent of the Gazan authorities, both the Ministry of Health and the media office. When you have that many people dead, there's ways that you can somewhat prove it, even if you can't get the exact number. But I don't think the fact that the media office is saying it's only 10,000, that means we should put that as the upper cap. They've been saying 10,000 for like a year now. It's just a number they're stuck on. I don't know what the assessment is. They don't get into it.
14,000.
What?
They said like that. I think it may have been like saying 14,000. They said maybe in like March or something like that. So, and I don't know how many missing bodies could there be, because most of the mass casualty events are in like populated areas where other people would see it. So
yeah, it
doesn't seem that logical for like them to be like tens of thousands of deaths that happen in areas that are like off limits. Like maybe there's a good amount, but it's probably not 100,000.
Can you see there being 20,000, let's say?
I mean, where would these deaths be occurring that they couldn't be occurred? Because most of the mass casualty events happen in places where there are other people around that can note them and like bring.
It could be buildings that were collapsed. You know, it could be a neighborhood that was destroyed. People are buried under rubble.
The thing is that most of the heaviest destruction is in neighborhoods that have already been evacuated. So it's not like there are tons of people.
No, yeah, wait, but tons of people out of a population of 2 million. I mean, 20,000 unaccounted for. That's only 1%. So we're not talking about tons of people relative to the population
size.
side.
In terms of the casualty figures, like the 60-something thousand. Like, where would these deaths be occurring? Who are the names of these people that are not on the list? You'd think you'd have more information about, like, if it was that. I mean, obviously, there's like maybe like 5,000 to like 10,000 you could see, but 20,000, 30,000 doesn't seem that plausible to me. Like,
so in the analysis that I put out months ago, but I'm working on an updated one, I put at least my new analysis is saying the unaccounted for deaths is anywhere from 10% over current death toll. So that'd be 6,000, anywhere to, I think I put the upper limit at 40,000. That's just trying to define a plausible range. I think it's most likely somewhere in the middle of that range. But you might be right. It might only be 10% unaccounted for. This is the big unknown. But even if we're talking about 10% unaccounted for, and let's say we have another 13,000 indirect deaths, you're already, I think, at 90,000 or getting on 90,000 deaths. So saying 100,000 is it's not a wild stretch. It's very much within the plausible range, which again, the plausible range I define as between 90 and 120 was the plausible range that I defined.
I was reading this thread by, Gabriel Epstein is?
Yeah. I work with him on some of this stuff. He does good work.
Because he was talking about this issue and talks about how he said since January there'd been about 1,300 bodies recovered, and he said basically an indication that only 1,300 doesn't indicate like tens of thousands of bodies under rubble, or thing, because they'd probably recover a lot more. It's a small territory. Because he was saying it's probably not like a huge undercount missing.
Mm-hmm. Correct. That's Gabriel's position.
The people missing from the list are going to disproportionately be combatants compared to those on the list, because they're more likely to remain in evacuated areas or not be reported by their family members.
And they're most likely to be buried deep in tunnels where they're harder to access. And it's also possible that Hamas is requesting that militants not be added to the list. Right, so it's possible it's possible that of the 66,000 killed, there's very little combatants in that number. Like that could be a list that's 99% civilian. Just so we're clear, it's possible combatants are just being omitted.
Well, I mean, if you're a combatant, like, because combatants often like intermingle with the civilian population, and Israel will like target them there, so they'll probably be added to the list just because the hospitals will see their bodies. But like the ones that are killed, like out in tunnels or in like evacuated areas.
Unless there's explicit command to omit combatant deaths, right? So we don't know. There's not. People make claims about Ministry of Health doing all this fabrication and stuff, but all those claims are really bullshit. What they could get away with, though, if you want to look at what they could get away with, it's omitting certain deaths, right? So whether those unaccounted for are disproportionately combatants, is a result of A, what you said, B, also because there actually might be an explicit command to not include them. But when we look at the data, the actual demographic breakdown, it's the percentage of civilians on the data we have is very plausibly 90+% just by looking at excess male deaths. So either Israel killed far less combatants than they're claiming, or that we really do have a significant number that have not yet been accounted for. But Gabriel's position on they only recovered 13,000, therefore I don't think it could be
1,300.
1,300. Yeah. Therefore, I don't think it'd be tens of thousands.
Since the beginning of the year.
He might be right. What I'm unsure of, why we can't know, is because we just don't have enough data as to what their rescue efforts look like. What parts of Gaza are inaccessible? How understaffed are they to do these rescue operations? Right? Is it possible that 1,300 is only covering 5% of the destruction of Gaza? I have no idea how to assess that. Right? So Gabriel might be right, but we have missing information.
A lot of the recovery was done within like the 2 months between January and March that you had the ceasefire, where they had pretty much freedom of access to like mostly all of Gaza. And so, and they'd probably have more information about where like certain casualty events happened. But I think during that period, it was like something like 800 something. And then the rest of the 500 were recovered at different points. But it's like, how do you prevent like the family reports and the missing body reports from not being like double counted? How do you know someone who's missing was not covered by like a family report?
Oh, no. They might be. Not only they might be, there's certainly an overlap, without a doubt. And it's possible that for that reason, some of the family reports are also erroneous. There's going to be a margin of error in the family reports. Maybe they think someone's dead, but they're really arrested. Now, what we did see was that the Ministry of Health is actually they initially added all family reported deaths, and then we saw them remove a few thousand of these names. But upon independent investigation, it was discovered that the majority of deaths that they removed, where data was found on their cause of death, it was in most instances an airstrike. So we actually discovered that the Ministry of Health was removing names of people who were killed in airstrikes. And we don't know exactly why. In my opinion, the best theory as to why they did this is the family did not fill out the paperwork properly, and they're trying to be very meticulous. Now, why does the Ministry of Health want to be meticulous, right? You could say, okay, they're just a group of doctors that are making their best effort to provide this data, and it's possible that that's part of the motivation. But I think, in addition to that, it's if there's some kind of fabrication or some massive error on the list, Israel will have a means to discover it. And I think Israel has a great incentive to discredit the Ministry of Health, discredit the numbers. And if anybody can do it, it would be them. So the Ministry of Health is kept in check essentially by Israel's ability to catch them in a lie if there was one.
Because you think it'd be the opposite. The Ministry of Health would know that these casualty figures for outrage at Israel. And so, like that's the main basis for the international outrage at Israel is the casualty.
Well, correct. But they can't get away with, they can't get away with releasing fake names and ID numbers. They're very limited in what they could do. The Gaza Media Office can say whatever they want, but the Ministry of Health releases the raw data. These are all names and ID numbers that exist in the Palestinian Population Registry, which Israel has full access to. We know from whistleblowers that Israel rely on this data. Also, Herzi Halevi in an interview recently cited 200,000 casualties. That's Ministry of Health data. Israel relies on these numbers. They have a means to check it. They know that it's legit. And if anybody could prove that it's illegitimate, it would be them before the Andrew Foxes of the world.
I saw this post by this guy Eisenberg. He said they're putting a lot of natural deaths on.
I'll tell you two names to avoid, like the plague. Andrew Fox and Eisenberg, they're not honest actors. The work they put out on the Ministry of Health is complete bullshit. Gabriel Epstein, on the other hand, who I do have disagreements with, he is an honest actor, and I think he does very good work. So I'm going to give you an endorsement of somebody I do disagree with because they're honest. Eisenberg and Fox steer clear. They have no issue to intentionally mislead the public. They get called out on it. They just block people. They won't engage on the merit. The way we know that most natural deaths.
John Spencer too, right?
Yeah. John Spencer's just.
John Spencer.
Yeah. Exactly. John Spencer as well.
Have you seen him on the Comedy Central recently?
Somebody sent me a clip where he was.
That was me. Yeah.
No, that was Shadow Disc.
Oh, okay. I sent you the link to like the entire video.
You think someone like John Spencer was intentionally lying, though, is the thing? He seems knowledgeable enough to know that a lot of this is bullshit.
I think John Spencer, he, at the very least, when he discovers he said something incorrect, he won't issue a public correction. I'll give you just one clear example, which I think was highlighted in the Comedy Cellar interview.
Yes. Yeah.
90%. He at the end distanced himself from the 90%. You know, there was a claim going around at the beginning that civilian combat to combatant ratio in urban warfare is 9-1. He would make that claim. He then, on the Comedy Cellar, he distanced himself. He said, I'm not making that claim. Other organizations made that claim. I know it's not true. But he on many occasions referenced that claim.
There's a Newsweek article he posted that has that shit.
Yeah,
I feel like History really hates John Spencer.
Yeah, for good reason. So John Spencer, it's possible
it seems like his arch nemesis, sort of like a level of hate that he has.
Maybe. But at least at the beginning, John Spencer had no problem peddling the 90%. Did he know it was false when he was peddling it? Hard to say. But once it was discovered it to be false, he didn't go on the record, say, hey, I made a mistake. And then he didn't, and even better yet, he should have made a mistake and said what the civilian to combatant ratio is. He just said, that's bad methodology. And I think he deleted his tweets where he said that, but he has an article published where you see him referencing it. Yeah, exactly.
You can't get rid of that one.
Yeah, he can't get rid of all the evidence of it. And I'm sure there's a lot of video interviews where he's made the claim. So yeah, he
there's another thing that he said that I have a big issue with this. He's saying that nobody's ever brought in an enemy population into their own area, and Sri Lanka did exactly that. We put camels into IDP camps and to our controlled area, and while still waging the war. It's not impossible, but they're always going to push for Sinai instead of Negev.
Okay, I think you did send me that. I recall
that. Said that Israel has done the most of any military in history to protect civilians. It's like,
it's bullshit.
Look, let me try to. I think it's possible, but it misses context. So let's say you do 20% more than any other military, but you use 100% more force on densely populated areas. Let's just say that's the calculation, right? So you could still claim Israel's doing more than others, but when the level of force you're using on densely populated areas is significantly more, that 20% more is negligible, and you don't get credit for that 20% more. You need to be judged by the precautions you're taking relative to the level of force you're using. And I mean, the proof is in the pudding when we look at the numbers, right? The rate at which women and children are being killed in Gaza, you need to go back to the Rwanda genocide to find something worse. And it's much worse, but it's not like, it's not like this is like Syria or like Russia or like Iraq and Afghanistan. It's not even close to these in terms of,
yeah, I think the number is 33% children as casualties.
That's a wild number.
Crazy high.
I guess one mitigating factor you could say, and obviously this isn't huge defense of Israel, but like Gaza is somewhat unique in that the civilian population is just trapped in this small area. That wasn't true in like Syria, Ukraine.
That's my point. Israel could have pulled in the civilians into the Negev, which is what Sri Lanka did during their war against the Tamil Tigers, to reduce the amount of civilian casualties and to filter through who was a terrorist and who was not. There was the same issue there. You had Tamil terrorists, and unlike Hamas,
well, if you look at Sri Lanka, they bombarded like a small area at the end of the civil war and killed like tens of thousands of civilians.
Yeah. It got that small because that's where the war progressed to. It wasn't like that the entire war. It eventually got to that small point, right? That was like the last days of the war. That's how wars go. They are large areas of battle, and they get smaller and smaller and smaller as the war goes on one side winning.
Yeah.
I mean, did you hear Netanyahu cite John Spencer?
Oh yeah,
Yes,
I mean
that's
that's his
Ivan's
boy. That's his boy, John Spencer.
But he seems to
I
be
think
doing
somebody
it,
actually
like,
found it.
in addition to
Somebody
this
recently found a
misinformation
connection.
seems to be doing actual harm. Like, his misinformation seems to do like material harm.
Wait, you cut
Like,
out?
if Netanyahu's citing him, oh, you here?
Yeah, it's just you get your audio goes way down and then way up.
Oh, but like, I think of someone like John Spencer. If Netanyahu's citing you, that means like basically what you're peddling is actually like doing real harm. Like, it's not just just silliness. It's
Yeah, I
actually
don't
being
know.
used for propaganda.
I'll tell you another one. I'll tell you. I need to wrap it up because I have a call, but I'll just give you two more areas where John Spencer wasn't honest. First of all, he also pushed the 1-to-1 civilian to combatant ratio claim, which is just complete nonsense when you look at the available data. There's no basis to making that claim. And now they're changing the narrative to 2-to-1. They're getting closer. It's higher than that, but at least they're off the 1-to-1 bullshit. So he pushed that and never issued a correction. But he did change his tune when he was on trigonometry. He said, I don't see why we talk about civilian to combatant ratio. That's not a conversation you have during war. He's the one who helped propagate and popularize those arguments. And now that he's seeing the civilian to combatant ratio is not so favorable, he's pulling back on it. Another one is he threw the U.S. under the bus just to paint Israel in good light. When he brings up Mosul and the civilian to combatant ratio in Mosul, what he conveniently omits is that a third of the civilian deaths in Mosul was in a result of ISIS going on a rampage. He included those in civilian deaths and attributed that to the U.S. in order to make it seem like it was a high civilian to combatant ratio, just to paint Israel in good light. I mean, that's as shill as it gets if you're going to throw your own country under the bus just to make Israel look good. Now, maybe that was also an honest mistake, but these are a lot of honest mistakes that he never issued a correction for, that people still cite because he made. And lastly, recently somebody discovered that he's funded by two Israeli institutions. So he's actually funded by Israel. He's on Israel's payroll. And somebody questioned him about that, about conflict of interest, and he stuttered and gave a pretty poor response. So I think he's.
But I think like some of the only comparable like civilian to combatant ratios for like Israel. So I think of is either like Russia and Chechnya was absurdly high, or like actual genocides. And then some people say Chechnya was genocide.
Chechnya,
so.
Yeah, Chechnya was
Some people that was genocide.
I think that's a perfectly okay descriptor for Chechnya. When I did a review of different conflicts to find things comparable to Gaza in terms of numbers and proportions, Chechnya stood out as in that range. Rwanda, of course, also. Sudan is similar if you include indirect deaths because they're having mass malnutrition.
Were killed. I looked at Wikipedia, said like 200,000 killed between 2003 to 2005. So that would be higher. I don't know if that's indirect too.
No, that includes indirect. And the problem with the data there is those countries already have a high infant mortality rate even in peacetime, and then it increases during war or genocide. The natural deaths increase. All increase of natural deaths should be categorized indirect deaths, but it seems the way they did the estimate was they just took all the starvation deaths, including what otherwise would have been, and they included that as well. So that does include indirect deaths, where in the data Gaza we're not including that. And secondly, also the number in Darfur, well, I was going to say relative to population size, that's if you compare it to just the whole. It's hard to do these comparisons because are you comparing it just to a city, just to a country? But in terms of if you look at violent deaths in a certain geographic location.
The war had like hundreds of thousands of deaths. Like
which one?
The Tigray War in Ethiopia. Tigray in Ethiopia.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had the war it had like hundreds of thousands of deaths. There were plenty of violent ones, but like a lot more were like indirect, starvation deaths.
Yeah. A lot of the conflicts that don't have great healthcare systems and already have a high infant mortality get decimated by wars causing the natural deaths / indirect deaths to skyrocket. If you paid attention, you know the Lancet article that said 180,000 Palestinians killed if you include indirect deaths, and they based it on other conflicts. The reason why that's not a great methodology is because they're comparing it to conflicts that were fundamentally different and had a completely different healthcare system. The Gazan population pre-October 7th is actually pretty healthy, pretty good life expectancy, pretty low infant mortality rate. So we shouldn't expect indirect deaths there to skyrocket like we have some of these other places, but that's also a big unknown. Is it 10,000? Is it 30,000? We don't have any data on that yet. We know there's some number, but we just don't know how to even start accounting for that. That's why, and this is how we, I think, got here. That's why we should understand the 66,000 to be an undercount. There's no way it's going to be the total. Now, I think we should also, with that, be able to push back on claims saying it's 500,000 because there's also no basis for that as well. But guys, with that, I need to wrap it up. Also, Kit Kat, good to see you here. It's been so long. Glad to see we got Kit Kat back in the mix. Anyways, I'm going to wrap it up. Guys, well, first let's end the stream and then I'll address Discord directly. Those on YouTube, thanks for tuning in. Until next time. When will be the next stream? I don't know. Maybe I'll do a stream for Yom Kippur out on the highway. It's a pretty cool scene. And I'll let you all know. And Shaked, you're asking what my opinion about Cleveland Steamers. I'm not sure who that is. I'll look them up. I'll let you know next time. For those who are watching this and want to join the conversation, I'm going to drop a link to Discord. Please join. If not, I will see you next time. Sending love from Herzliya and the beautiful land of Israel and Palestine. Till next time.